For refusing to open the door when my family came begging 2 weeks after humiliating me? My name is Brooke, I am 28 years old, and I live alone in a small apartment in Chicago. 3 weeks ago, I drove 4 hours back to my parents' house for what my mother proudly calls our early family Christmas dinner, even though it is actually on Thanksgiving. She said it was just more convenient that way. Everyone was off work. Everyone could be together. I almost turned the car around twice on that drive, but guilt is a powerful fuel. So I showed up with a homemade pumpkin pie and a smile that did not quite reach my eyes. The dinner was loud and chaotic, with football on TV, everyone talking over each other, acting like this was something special. Then, as the plates were cleared, my mom stood up and clapped her hands for attention as if she were hosting an awards show. She pulled out a bag full of wrapped gifts and began passing them out one by one, going around the table. My dad got a new golf shirt. My uncle got his favorite expensive wine. My sisters got personalized trinkets, bracelets, and a spa gift certificate. People were laughing, thanking her and hugging her. I waited because of course there had to be something for me too. When the bag was empty and she still had not looked my way, I finally asked as casually as I could, "Is there anything for me?" She did not even hesitate. "Be grateful you can sit here," she said, as if reminding me I should be thankful just to be allowed in the door. My uncle snorted and added, "Be glad we still remember your name," and the whole table erupted in laughter. I felt my face burn, but I just nodded and said, "Good to know." No yelling, no tears, just that. I left early, drove back to Chicago in the dark, and decided something was going to change. Because 2 weeks later, those same people who laughed at me were at my door, banging and pleading with me to talk. And that is where the real story began. When I got back to Chicago that night, I dropped my keys on the counter. I threw the pumpkin pie in the trash and sat on my kitchen floor, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to send a long text in the family group chat, telling them exactly how they had humiliated me, but I knew how that would end. They would say I was being dramatic, that it was just a joke, that I should be grateful I was even invited. So instead I texted Jordan, my best friend. She called me in 30 seconds. I told her everything, from the fake smiles to what my mother said about being grateful to just sit there, and my uncle's little "still remember your name" jab. There was a long silence on the phone, and then Jordan said very calmly, "Brooke, that is not normal. It is not just rude, it is cruel. They have zero respect for you." Hearing someone else say it out loud made something inside my chest snap. I opened my banking app while we were still on the phone and started looking. Gym memberships, monthly charges, streaming services in my name that I barely used because I was always working. Amazon Prime, family plan. Random tickets, food orders, Ubers. All those little, "Can you just put it on your card? I will get you back" moments that never materialized. I realized I had been silently serving as the invisible financial backbone of the close-knit family they were so proud to post about online. They could joke about me, but they had no problem leaving my card on file like I was their personal sponsor. Jordan said, "So what if you just stopped paying? What if you made them feel what it is actually like to lose you?" The idea was both terrifying and thrilling. That weekend, I sat down with my laptop and a notebook and made a list. Mom's yoga and gym membership. Dad's streaming and Prime subscriptions. My little sister's last-minute amusement park tickets and concert splurges, the gas money, all the auto payments that had my name on them and their convenience attached. Then I started canceling. Click. Cancel membership. Click. Turn off auto-renew. Click. Remove card. With every confirmation email that hit my inbox, I felt a little bit lighter. I did not post any dramatic announcement in the group chat. I just let the systems they depended on quietly grind to a halt. A few days later, my mom called during my lunch break. "No, hello, no, how are you? Just, my gym card was declined this morning. Did something happen with the payment?" I swallowed my nerves and said, "Yes, I canceled it. You will need to set it up in your own name." She sounded offended. "You know I go to those classes for my health," she said. "You know I count on that." I replied, "You also know what you said to me at dinner. I am not paying for people who laugh at me like that anymore." She gasped as if I had slapped her. My dad called later that night because the streaming was not working. "It says we need to update the payment," he grumbled. "Did you screw something up?" I told him I did not screw anything up. "I just stopped paying for you grown adults. You can pay your own bills." He went quiet then blew up. Families take care of each other, Brooke. I said, exactly. It is supposed to be mutual. After that, the group chat started exploding. Little passive-aggressive messages about how some people forget where they come from, and how money is not everything but some people think it is. I muted the chat. I decided I was not going home for Christmas, no matter how much they tried to guilt me. For the first time in my life, I decided not to play the part they had written for me. I thought they would sulk, maybe talk about me at the country club, and eventually move on. I underestimated how much they relied on me, not just for money but for control. Because the more their subscriptions and conveniences fell apart, the more desperate they became. And that is how I ended up with my entire family on the other side of my apartment door, banging and screaming to be let in. The first wave of the fallout hit a few days after I canceled everything. I was at my desk trying to focus on a campaign report, half reading the same sentence over and over, when my phone started vibrating non-stop. At first, it was just the family group chat, lighting up like a fire alarm. My mother sent a long paragraph about how some people forget who raised them and how deeply hurt she was that I would attack her health by canceling the gym. She made it sound like I had taken away her medication, not a membership charge to my card. She went on about how yoga was the only thing keeping her sane, as if I were personally responsible for her mental stability. My father followed up with his usual lines about sacrifice and family duty, adding his classic, "You would not have your fancy Chicago job if it was not for us," something he always threw out whenever money came up, as if my degree and career were just an itemized expense on a bill I had not finished paying. Then my sisters chimed in with emojis and comments. One wrote, "Imagine choosing Netflix over your own mother," which was ironic considering I had also canceled Netflix and they were the ones who used it far more than I did. The other sent a text that said, "You have changed so much. You used to be kind," followed by a crying emoji and a broken heart. It was the same old script, just louder and in a group thread. I stared at the chat for a minute, my chest feeling tight. Then I muted it again and put my phone face down on the desk. I could feel the notifications still coming in, vibrating every few seconds like the phone itself was anxious. 10 minutes later, Jordan sent me screenshots from Instagram. "Are you seeing this?" she wrote. My younger sister had posted a black background with white text that read, "Some people will cut off their own blood for $1. Remember who was there before the paycheck," with a broken heart emoji and a little praying hands icon. She did not tag me, but she did not have to. Half of our extended family follows both of us. My mom commented underneath, "So sad but true. I love you, honey. Some people just lose their way." A few cousins replied, "Family over everything. Money cannot buy loyalty, and people change when they move to the city." Someone even said, "You guys are the strongest family I know," which would have been funny if it did not hurt so much. A knot formed in my stomach as I read the comments. They were rewriting history in real time, turning themselves into the victims and me into the heartless villain who had abandoned them for money and a city skyline. None of them mentioned the part where my mother told me to be grateful to even be allowed to sit there, or where my uncle made me the punchline of a joke. None of them talked about the years of, "Can you just put it on your card?" moments that were apparently invisible. I locked my phone, set it aside, and just sat there for a while, listening to the hum of the office and the tapping of keyboards. I realized that my whole life I had been terrified of being called ungrateful, so I kept overgiving to prove I was not. And here I was finally saying no, and they were slapping that exact label on me anyway. That night, instead of crying like I normally would have, I opened my laptop on my kitchen table and went back to my banking app. If they wanted to talk about sacrifice and responsibility, fine, we could talk numbers. The one language that does not care about guilt or manipulation. I went through 5 full years of transactions and started filtering. Gym, yoga studio, streaming services, Amazon Prime family plan. Theme park tickets with notes like, "For Riley and friends." Concerts where the charge went through on my account at 11:59 p.m. after a frantic, "I will pay you back tomorrow" text. Emergency car repairs my uncle could not afford that somehow ended up on my card with a promise of, "I will get you back when my bonus comes in," which never happened. Restaurant bills where I picked up the tab because, "You make more than us, it is not a big deal," was said half-jokingly but accepted with full seriousness. It was painful and strangely validating at the same time. With every line I highlighted, I could remember the exact conversation that went with it, the exact moment I swallowed my resentment and smiled. I copied it all into a spreadsheet. I added dates and brief descriptions. I color-coded the categories just to keep myself sane, and watched the grand total climb higher and higher until I had to just sit back and stare at it. This was not a few moments of generosity. It was a pattern. It was years of me being the default safety net whenever someone forgot their wallet, or was short until Friday, or just needed a little help. In that moment, I realized that to them, my money was just an extension of their own, something they felt entitled to because of biology and history. I drafted an email. The recipients were my parents and both my sisters. The subject line read, "Since we are talking about who owes what." I hovered over the keyboard for a moment, and then I started typing. In the body of the message, I wrote very clearly that I was aware of everything they had done for me growing up, that I was grateful for a roof and food in school, that I was not pretending I raised myself. But I also wrote that the idea that I somehow owed them infinite financial support and blind tolerance in return for the rest of my life was not right and not healthy. Then I pasted the grand total from the spreadsheet, and a brief breakdown beneath it, listing the categories. I did not call them thieves or demand they pay it all back on the spot like some debt collector. I just wrote, "If you are going to keep insisting that I am ungrateful and selfish for stopping these payments, please look at this and ask yourselves who has been taking care of whom." My hands were shaking as I hit send. My heart was pounding like I had just jumped into cold water, but I also felt a weight lift off me that I had been carrying for years, a bag I had not realized had gotten so heavy. My mother's reply came fast, the subject line in all caps. "How dare you?" The body was a wall of text calling my list manipulative and cruel. She said only a heartless person would throw money in their parents' faces, and accused me of trying to put a price tag on their love and sacrifice. She twisted every example into a story about how hard it had been for them, and how ungrateful I was for making them feel small. She ended with, "I am so ashamed of who you have become," and a line about how she did not even recognize me anymore. Then she blocked me on Facebook. I know she blocked me because Jordan sent me another screenshot less than an hour later. My mother had just posted one of those generic family quote images, something like, "Family is forever, even when some members forget," with a long caption about staying strong through difficult times and being thankful for the children who still honor their parents and understand true loyalty. The likes and supportive comments poured in. People wrote, "You are such a good mother. Your kids are lucky to have you, and do not let anyone tear your family apart," not knowing they were cheering on someone who had just used the word grateful against her own child at the dinner table. None of those people knew that every one of their cozy Netflix nights and morning yoga classes had been quietly paid for by the daughter she had humiliated in front of everyone. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, angry and shaky, but underneath the anger was a strange, clean, sharp clarity. They were not going to wake up one day and suddenly see me differently on their own. They were committed to this version of me, the difficult, ungrateful city daughter who owed them everything and gave them endless reasons to complain. The only thing I could control was what I gave them access to. My money, my time, my energy, my silence. As Christmas got closer and more of their conveniences were shut off or demanded new payment methods, the tone of their messages changed. The passive-aggressive posts dwindled. The calls became more frantic. The guilt-tripping turned into real panic. They stopped criticizing me online and started scrambling in real life, trying to patch the gaps where my support used to be. And that is when their entitlement morphed into something much stronger, much uglier, and much harder to ignore. The kind of desperation that does not stay on screens but shows up right outside your door. 2 weeks after that Thanksgiving dinner, I was in my apartment on a Saturday afternoon, watching some random YouTube video and trying not to think about my family, when my buzzer rang. I thought it was a delivery at first, but I had not ordered anything. Then my phone lit up with my dad's name. I let it go to voicemail. A second later, my mom started calling. Then the buzzer rang again, longer this time, like someone was leaning on it. My stomach clenched. I went to the intercom and pressed the button just long enough to hear the noise from the lobby. That is when I heard my mother's voice, echoing up the stairwell, loud and shrill. "Brooke, we know you are in there," she called out, her voice falsely cheerful, like she was trying to sound normal for anyone listening, but underneath it was pure rage. I froze for a second, then quietly checked the peephole. A few moments later I saw them. My parents were outside my apartment door, having clearly talked another tenant into letting them in. My mother was holding a bright red gift bag with tissue paper sticking out, like something from a commercial. My dad was carrying a couple of smaller bags looped over his wrist. My phone started ringing again on the table behind me. I let it ring. My mom knocked on the door politely at first. 3 soft taps. "Brooke, sweetie, open up. We brought you something. We just want to talk before Christmas," she called out, loud enough for anyone on the floor to hear. I took a deep breath. I walked closer, but I did not open the door. "I do not want to talk right now," I said through the wood. "You need to leave." The shift in her voice was instant. The fake sweetness cracked. She knocked harder, the gift bag crinkling. "We drove 4 hours to get here, Brooke. 4 hours. The least you can do is open the door and talk to your parents." My father cut in, his voice already annoyed. "This is ridiculous. We are not doing this through a door. Open up." I repeated, "No. You do not get to humiliate me, make fun of me, and then show up with gift bags like that fixes everything. You need to leave." There was a pause, and then the knocking turned into loud banging. My mother's voice rose, shaky and dramatic. "Do you hear yourself? This is what that city has done to you. You think you are better than us now? You canceled things with no warning. You sent that disgusting email. And now you cannot even look us in the face." She started to sob loudly. "Our family is falling apart and you do not even care," she wailed. My dad lowered his voice, but I could still hear the anger in it. "This is about respect, Brooke. You owe us the chance to talk in person. Be brave enough to open the door." I almost laughed. Be brave enough. Considering what started this whole thing was them making fun of me in front of everyone like I was a child. Instead, I just said, "Respect is mutual." Standing outside my home, trying to force your way into a conversation I have said no to is not respect. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was my younger sister calling. After I declined, she immediately sent a text. "They are outside your door. Just open it. Do not make this worse. Mom is freaking out." I texted back. "They showed up unannounced. That is on them." A second later she replied, "You are being cruel. They brought you Christmas presents to make up for it." Through the door my mom must have caught on to that angle. She raised her voice again. "We brought you presents, Brooke. We did not forget you. We are trying. This is what you wanted, right?" It was almost funny how she twisted it. I imagine what was in those bags. Maybe a basic sweater from a discount store, maybe a candle, something they could point to later and say, "We tried, but she threw it in our faces." I did not want any part of it. "You do not fix things with presents," I said. "You have not even apologized for what you said, for laughing at me in front of everyone." There was a moment of silence. Then my mother snapped. "Oh my God, you are still on that? It was a joke, Brooke. A joke. Normal people can take a joke at dinner." My dad added, "You are blowing one comment out of proportion and punishing the whole family for it." I knew in that moment that there was nothing for me on the other side of that door. Not yet. Not like this. I pulled out my phone and texted my mom. "You have 10 minutes to leave or I am calling building security." I said louder, "You need to leave. I am serious." The banging stopped for an instant. Then it came back even harder, my mother's voice cracking. "We need to talk. Open up, please. Do not do this to us. Do not do this to your mother." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but I did not move toward the lock. I just stood there, staring at the doorknob, repeating in my head, "You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to say no." After about 20 minutes of knocking, crying, pleading, and my dad muttering that I was crazy, they finally left. A neighbor from down the hall emailed me that night through the building portal, kindly asking if everything was okay and mentioning the loud scene outside my door. I sat on my couch afterward, shaking, and opened a blank note on my phone. I started writing down exactly what happened, every word they said, every feeling in my chest. I did not want to be gaslit later into believing I had imagined it. The more I wrote, the clearer it became that this was not just about one dinner or a few subscriptions. It was about control. They were not used to me setting boundaries, and they did not take kindly to the word no. I thought the worst was over after they left that day. I told myself they would cool off, complain about me to their friends, and then back down. I was wrong. That visit was just the prelude. The next time they came back, they would bring more than gift bags and guilt, and they would show me just how far they were willing to go to force me back into the role they needed me to play. After the scene with the gift bags outside my door, I thought they might back off. For a few days it was almost peaceful. The family chat was reduced to vague quotes about forgiveness and praying for those who lose their way. I kept it muted, focused on work, had coffee with Jordan, and tried to sleep without hearing my mother's "Be grateful you can sit here" on a loop in my head. I told myself the worst was over. It was not. The calls started up again. First from my parents' numbers, which I let go to voicemail. My mother's messages were tearful about how she could not sleep, how her blood pressure was up, how the doctor told her stress like this could cause serious health problems, and she asked if that was what I wanted. My father's messages were colder. I was destroying the family. I owed them a conversation because they raised me. When I stopped answering, they switched to random local numbers. I picked one up thinking it was for work, and it was my mother saying, "So you do still know how to answer the phone," like she had caught me in a lie. I hung up. Then my Uncle Frank joined in, leaving voicemails about how you do not just cancel family like a subscription, and how I would need them one day. Online, my sister posted another sad TikTok about being abandoned by her own sibling, who chose money and strangers over the people who were there from day one. No names, but the caption, "Sometimes blood hurts more than strangers," made it clear. Strangers filled her comments with support, telling her to cut off toxic people. Meanwhile, the real-life consequences of my canceled payments were hitting home. My mom left a panicked voicemail about the gym wanting a new card and an initiation fee, saying yoga was the only thing that calmed her down, and how could I do this to her? A cousin let it slip that my dad was complaining at the golf club about ungrateful kids who treat their parents like ATMs. One night I opened my spreadsheet again and added a new column, behavior. I listed the calls, the guilt trips, the TikToks, the surprise visit. Seeing it all laid out like that made it impossible to pretend this was just a phase. It was a system, and I had stopped playing my part. A few days before Christmas it escalated. I came home from work, and as I rounded the corner to my floor, my mom, dad, and Uncle Frank were standing in front of my apartment like a barricade. "There she is," my mom said loudly. "Feeling powerful now? Calling security on your own parents." I set my bag on the floor and clutched my keys. "You should not be here. You need to go." My dad said they were not leaving, that they drove all this way to talk in person, and I owed them that. My mom kept talking about how they were trying to save the family while I was hiding in my little city box and treating them like parasites. My uncle leaned against the wall, smirking, asking if I really thought my neighbors cared about me more than my own blood. "You do not just cancel blood like that," he said. I told them blood did not give them the right to show up after I told them to stop. My mom scoffed, said nobody laid a hand on me. She accused me of twisting everything and making them out to be a problem so I could feel justified. My dad stepped closer until my back was against my own door. "Here is what is going to happen," he said. "You are going to come home with us for Christmas. This is ending now." My voice shook, but I said, "No. I told you to leave. You are harassing me." My mom slammed her hand against the door right next to my head with a loud crack that made me flinch, yelling about everything they gave me and how much I owed them. My uncle saw me flinch and smiled, then put his hand on my shoulder and tried to push me away from the lock. Something inside me went cold. I knocked his hand off and said loudly and clearly, "Do not you ever touch me again." I pulled out my phone, called building security, and said, "My family is here again. I have told them to leave, but they will not. One of them just put his hands on me. I need someone up here." They looked at me like I had set the building on fire. The guard came up, listened to both sides, turned to them and said, "She lives here. She asked you to leave. You cannot keep coming here and causing a disturbance. If you come back, we will have to call the police." He escorted them to the elevator as my mom cried and my dad muttered about ungrateful kids. My uncle shot me one last look and said quietly, "You are going to regret this." Later, management slipped a notice under my door, documenting the incident and stating they were not allowed back on the property without permission, and that repeat visits could lead to a no trespass order and police involvement. For the first time, there was something in writing that said this was not just family drama. Other people saw it. Other people were willing to call it what it was: I wanted to believe that warning would be enough to make them stop, but people who are used to control do not often give it up over a piece of paper. And the next time they came, it would not just be security getting involved. A few days before Christmas, I finally started to relax. Security had filed their report, my parents and uncle had been escorted out once, and my phone was quiet for the first time in weeks. I blocked a few more numbers, kept the family chat muted, and threw myself into year-end projects, holding on to the plan of spending Christmas Eve with Jordan, eating takeout and watching dumb movies. I told myself they were done. I was wrong. One evening I came up the stairs with groceries when I heard it, my last name echoing in the stairwell. My mother's voice sharp and too loud. She is on this floor. I know she is. Brooke. Out. Now. My stomach clenched. As I rounded the corner onto my floor, there they were again. My mom, my dad, and my Uncle Frank, standing in the middle of the hall in front of my door like they owned the place. My mom whipped around to face me. There you are, she snapped. Feeling powerful now? Calling security on your own parents. My father stood stiffly, his jaw tight. My uncle was leaning against the wall like this was his afternoon's entertainment. I set my grocery bag on the floor and clutched my keys. You should not be here, I said. You need to leave. We are not leaving, my dad said. Not until you stop acting like a stranger and talk to us like an adult. We drove all this way before Christmas to try to fix this. My mom cut in, her voice rising so everyone could hear. We are still fighting for this family, she said. You cut us off, humiliated us with that email, called security on us, and you will not even look us in the eye. We gave you everything. I could feel doors cracking open down the hall. My uncle pushed himself off the wall and stepped closer. You think these people care about you more than we do? He asked, nodding his head toward the other apartments. You think they will take you in when your big city life falls apart? Blood is blood, kid. You cannot just cancel that. Something inside me hardened. Blood is not a free pass, I said. It does not give you the right to show up at my home after I have told you to stop. It does not give you permission to scream at me or corner me, or put your hands on me. My mom scoffed. Nobody put their hands on you, she snapped. You twist everything to make us look like monsters. Security said there was nothing on camera last time. You have decided we are the problem so you can feel justified. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my elderly neighbor down the hall, standing in her doorway, her phone in her hand, recording again. Our eyes met. She gave me a tiny nod that said, I see it and I am not pretending I do not. My father stepped closer, until my back was against my own door. He lowered his voice. Here is what is going to happen, he said. You are going to pack a bag, you are going to come home with us for Christmas, and we are going to sit down and sort this out. This stunt with the cancellations and security ends now. My hands were shaking, but my answer came out clear. No, I am not going anywhere with you. I told you to leave me alone. You keep coming back. You are harassing me. My mom slammed her hand against the door right next to my head with a loud crack that made me flinch. Harassing, she seethed. We gave you life. You would not have this apartment, this job, anything without us. You owe us respect. You owe us your presence at Christmas. You owe us more than this. My uncle saw me flinch and smirked. You call this harassing, he said. Then he put his hand on my shoulder and shoved, just enough to push me away from the lock. It was not a punch, but it was a message. We still control you. Something inside me went cold. I knocked his hand off and said loudly, Do not you ever touch me again. Before he could answer, my neighbor's voice rang out down the hall. I am calling the police, she said clearly. This is the second time you have done this. She asked you to leave. I am recording all of it. For a second everyone froze. My mom turned and shrieked. This is none of your business. This is family. My neighbor did not flinch. You made it our business when you started screaming in the hallway, she said. I could hear sirens in the distance getting closer. My mother turned back to me, adopting that broken manipulative tone I knew so well. Stop her, she pleaded. Tell them it is fine. Tell her not to call. Do you want your uncle to be arrested? Do you want your mother to have a heart attack right here on the floor? Is that what you want for Christmas? My chest felt tight. For a split second, I felt that old instinct to fix it, to give in and apologize just to make it stop. Then I remembered the spreadsheet, the dinner table, the way they laughed while I just stood there burning. I took a deep breath. "I want you to leave," I said. "If you did not want the police involved, you should not have come back." A few minutes later, 2 officers walked down the hall, taking in the scene. My parents and uncle, my neighbor with her phone out, me pressed against my door with my keys clutched in my fist. One officer looked at me. "You live here?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "They are my family. I have asked them to leave multiple times. Security has already escorted them out once. They keep coming back. They have put their hands on me. I do not feel safe." My voice was shaking, but I got the words out. The other officer conferred with my neighbor, who showed them the video of my uncle grabbing my shoulder, and my mother slamming her hand on the door next to my head. That was enough. The first officer turned to my family, his tone hardening. "You need to leave the property now," he said. "You have been warned. This is harassment. You cannot come here and corner her just because you are related. If you come back or contact her like this again, she can file for a restraining order and press charges." My mother started sobbing about how worried they were. My father argued about his rights as a parent. My uncle muttered about soft cops and disrespectful kids. The officers did not care. They pulled him aside, took down his identification, and wrote him a citation, explaining exactly what it meant. He just stood there, his face red, as the officer told him he was officially on record for harassing his niece. Seeing that man, the one who had laughed at me my whole life, look completely lost as someone with authority told him that he was the problem, did something to me. For once, it was not me being humiliated in front of everyone. As they were escorted to the elevator, my mother clutched her chest, saying she felt dizzy, that the stress was too much. The officer offered to call an ambulance. My father said he would drive her to the hospital himself. I learned later that her blood pressure had spiked and she spent the night in the emergency room, that my father was furious about the hospital bills and the fine, that my uncle was suddenly a lot quieter at the bar where he used to brag about our perfect family. After they left, management slid a notice under my door, confirming the incident, stating that my parents and uncle were not allowed back on the property without prior permission, and reminding me that I could file for a restraining order if I chose to. A cousin texted me, "People are talking. I saw a video of your mom and uncle yelling at you in a hallway. Are you okay?" I stared at it for a second, then texted back, "I am okay. Better than I was." For the first time, the consequences of their behavior were landing on them instead of me. And as Christmas came and went in total silence between us, that silence felt less like a punishment and more like space. Space where I could finally start to imagine a life that was not built around managing their chaos. In the weeks after Christmas, the silence from my family felt unreal. I kept bracing for another explosion, another surprise visit, another wall of guilt-laced texts, but nothing came. No Merry Christmas, no Happy New Year, not even a passive-aggressive quote with my name written between the lines. At first, it felt like being in a room right after a fire alarm has gone off. My body was still tensed for a noise that was not there. Slowly, it began to feel like something else, space. I heard through cousins and mutual friends what was happening back home. My mother had to do follow-up appointments after that emergency room visit. Her doctor told her bluntly that if she did not get her stress under control, she was heading for serious trouble. Without my money to quietly cover extra expenses, she had to cut back on the gym and some of the social activities she used to brag about. She had a younger coworker help her download budgeting apps to figure out how autopay worked. My dad had to call the streaming and subscription companies himself, sit on hold, reset passwords, and for once, solve the problem without just saying, "Go ask Brooke." He complained loudly about my mom's hospital bill from that night and my uncle's fine, but this time he had no one to dump those expenses on. Uncle Frank's funny guy image took a hit too. People at their country club had seen, or at least heard about, the video of him grabbing my shoulder in the hallway while the police wrote down his name on a citation. He did not go to jail, but the public humiliation was done. It is hard to play the charming uncle when everyone knows you got reported to the police by your own niece. My sisters got quieter online. Fewer selfies at concerts and impulse trips. More posts about picking up extra shifts and working toward their goals. When I stepped away as their invisible safety net, they had to start becoming their own. That is what struck me. My boundary did not just force me to grow up, it forced all of them to. Once the adrenaline faded, I crashed a little. With no new drama to distract me, all the old stuff resurfaced. The jokes that were not jokes, the times I paid the bill and swallowed the resentment, the years I believed that keeping the peace was my job. I finally got a therapist instead of just talking about it. In our first session, she asked me, "When did you learn that your role in the family was to be the fixer?" I did not have a neat answer, but the question stuck with me. I also found an online support group, a subreddit full of people with stories that sounded uncomfortably familiar. Parents who used guilt as a weapon, relatives who used family as a leash, siblings who only reached out when they needed something. Reading their comments, I saw words I had never allowed myself to use for my own situation. Manipulation, emotional issues, financial exploitation. It did not change what happened, but it changed how I judged myself for finally walking away. Months later, my mother sent me a short email. No subject line. Just, "I am sorry things got so bad between us. I do not agree with how you handled everything, but I miss you. I hope you are doing okay." It was not the apology I wanted, but it was a start. I did not reply right away. When I did, I kept it simple. I told her I was okay, that I hoped she was taking her health seriously, and that if we were ever going to talk again, it would have to be different. No yelling, no guilt, no pretending Thanksgiving was just a joke. I said I was open to a conversation someday, preferably with a therapist present, but I was not going back to paying for everything and being grateful just to sit there. Sending that felt less like I was opening the door and more like we were locking the door on the old version of us, leaving only a small protected window open. I do not know what the long-term future holds for my family. Maybe we will build something new, smaller and healthier. Maybe we will just stay in quiet, distant contact forever. What I do know is this. For the first time, my peace does not depend on their moods. I pay my own bills. I spend my holidays with people who do not make me the punchline or call it love. I no longer measure my worth by how useful I am to the people who raised me. If there is a lesson in all of this, it is that family is not a free pass to disrespect you. Love without respect is just control disguised as concern. Boundaries are not the wall. They are self-love in action. And sometimes the most satisfying outcome is not slamming a door in someone's face. It is walking away, letting them finally feel the full weight of their own behavior, and building a life where you are not just grateful to be in the room, you are genuinely happy to be standing in it on your own. Comment. I hope this story is a reminder of your own strength. It is never selfish to demand respect, even from the people you love. Setting boundaries is not an act of aggression, but an act of self-preservation. You are the only person who can truly define your worth and protect your peace. True kindness must always start with being kind to yourself. Healing is a process, and it often requires making difficult choices that others might not understand. Sometimes the greatest victory is not winning an argument, but choosing to walk toward a calmer life. Always remember to listen to the quiet voice inside you that knows what you deserve. Your well-being is the most important foundation you can build. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.